mandated reporting is really about making sure that we protect the health, safety, and welfare of individuals in need and the individuals that we serve. And so, as we go along today in this training, what we're really going to talk about is what you would need to do if you witness or you suspect that someone that you're helping or someone that you're serving or someone that you're aware of in general is experiencing any sort of abuse and neglect. And this training is really, really important because it's not just our policy as a company, it's not just our belief as people, but really it's the law. And so we want to make sure that you're aware of how it can impact you as a professional in this industry if you fail to report as well. So this training will basically go over what are your responsibilities as a contractor, employee, intern, clinician, case manager, anyone, even an administrator like me and Stacy. We all have this same responsibility to make sure that we're acting in the best interest of the people that we're helping. Okay. The training will occur moving forward now that we have our new licensing designations when people are hired, and it will be reviewed in a refresher with you all annually. And in this training, we'll go over any signs of abuse, what you need to do to make sure that adequate reporting takes place, and then after a report is made, what are the documentation requirements that you're responsible for making sure get completed. And for those of you who don't know, when you go out and get the type of license that our facility has, the licensing entity, the Colorado Department of Behavioral Health, has like a 300-page manual. And in that 300-page manual, they outline there are 10 required trainings that everybody has to go through in order to make sure that you guys can keep your license and that you're keeping people safe and you're taking steps to minimize risk of the people that you're helping. And this is one of them. So it's in the top 10 for a reason. It's really, really important when it comes to maintaining the safety of the people that we help. And why it's important, failure to report, I honestly feel like these are in order from least important to most important. But yeah, failure to report might might lead to some sort of a conversation with your supervisor. It might lead to potentially some sort of like a written notification saying, oh, make sure you do this in the future, and this is really important. But in other cases, it can actually lead to loss of certifications, loss of licensure. It can lead to legal consequences, and at the very worst, it could lead to someone getting seriously hurt. And so I want you guys all to kind of keep in mind as we move along today that failure to report something when you are concerned or you believe that someone is in danger or they're at risk of being hurt or worse, it really is failure to do your proper service to them. It's failure to have their back. And so we really want to make sure that we are reporting things and concerns as they arise. Now, to open it up to people in the room, I want to ask you, is there any reason that you think people struggle to report or they wouldn't want to report when they believe that someone might be a victim of abuse or neglect? Kevin?
Yeah, so there could be a couple reasons. Um, Unfortunately, one of them can be the coaches not just doing their job all around, or they may feel that reporting, because sometimes coming from the background we come from, like prison, we have this thought process about reporting to cops or reporting to authority agencies. So I think we got to dispel that kind of mindset. Um, to be in this field because it is our responsibility to report those things. And we could be thinking like, oh, I don't want to be a snitch to this person. I don't want to snitch on this person. So
Mhm.
that may stop that person from reporting to the cops or reporting to them because they may feel that they're turning their back on their client,
Mhm.
which could be very detrimental because the whole purpose of this is to help our clients, and possibly reporting something could save their lives. So that could
Yeah.
be some of the barriers we run in as coaches.
Great example, the stigma. Raphael?
I believe a lot of it has to do with like not only lack of training, but like lack of professionalism and understanding that people go through things, right? We're not the only ones that just think that the world revolved around us. And coming from prison, it's like kind of like what the gentleman was saying that we feel like we shut down when it's like, okay, we have to encounter law enforcement and kind of like kind of get into that space where you telling or whatever. But yeah, that's how I see it, man. And as for me, I'm going to report whatever it is that's not within the scope of what we need to be doing.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's my take on that.
Okay. Eddie?
I mean, yeah. I mean, there's individuals that just don't want to put somebody else on the spot, and just they may feel based on their personal biases that they might be you know what's the word I'm looking for? It can be detrimental to their client,
Mhm.
and again, based on personal biases. However, it might be difficult, but you got to put those personal biases aside, be professional, and do what's required, not only by law, but what can also be a moral requirement, a moral obligation to do the right thing and protect that client and anybody else outside of that. Now, at the end of the day, too, we also need to protect ourselves as a company because everybody would be affected by making the wrong decision. And
Mhm.
there's that stigma, Casey, very well. I come from the streets. I was born in Compton, raised in East LA, and made some decisions along the way that I'm not proud of, but ended up where I ended up. But I understand both sides,
Mhm.
but I also understand too is that, we have to change our way of thinking. Not every, law enforcement individual shows up is out there to make an arrest. There's a lot of them like myself that show up genuinely wanting to help. So sometimes it could be difficult to make that report, but at the end of the day, that police officer, whoever you might be reporting to, they have other tools available to help that individual. It doesn't mean they're going to go make an arrest. They can say, hey, now I can contact somebody in the medical space that can help you out. Doesn't mean they're going to get arrested or get in any sort of trouble.
Mhm. Thank you. Cheyenne?
I think a lot of it would be fear of damaging the trust. Like
Yeah.
they could also be there. The abuser could be a client as well as the survivor. And I'd be
Mhm.
afraid that it would be a trust problem right there.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. Bill?
It's interesting that you said that, Cheyenne, because my point was going to be, we also need to look at this from the standpoint of the client's perspective.
Mhm.
And each of you as coaches and me and my responsibility when and if I have an opportunity to react with the client, to let them know that there should not be fear or apprehension or any negative feelings when it comes to them reporting, because some of them, there may be things going on that we as coaches and providers have no idea about because the client didn't tell us.
Mhm.
So we need to make sure that every last one of our clients, which is again the reason that we're here, are well aware of the fact that we are assistance, we are help, we are a, the point where you start and not hold back from us.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And honestly, you're right. Like looking at it from through the client's lens, coming in and making a report is a big step as it is. I'm sure for a lot of people it's scary. I'm sure for a lot of people, you know, if there are thought distortions that are impacting them over a period of time, they might have gotten out of thinking for years every time that they were abused or hurt or hit that, oh, well, I deserved it. I did something to, you know, make them respond that way. And when they finally, you know, reach this point where they're feeling brave enough or they have this awareness to say, I do need to get out of this situation, or this person is here to help me. Absolutely, you know, we want to make them feel like there's an open forum where they're not going to be judged, you know, and help them to see like, there's someone over here that's there to support me, reassure me, be there for me through this, because, you know, it is scary. Bill?
Well, one good example of that is an abused family member,
Mm-hmm.
an abused husband or wife. If for husband, it's just downright shame that I'm being abused by a woman, that I'm not going to talk about it. For the female, it could be just strict outright fear. I want to leave, or he's really sorry that he hit me, you know, and you know it was my fault. And so from our perspective, we need to make sure that that is well known, that we are here to help.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you all. Thank you all for sharing those insights. Bill, did you put your hand back up?
No, I was trying to put it down.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. All right. So what is a mandated reporter? That's us. It includes all of us, licensed healthcare providers, counselors, certified coaches, teachers, anyone who's working directly with children or vulnerable adults. And a vulnerable adult, sometimes you might think of as someone who is maybe elderly or potentially more easily manipulated. But really, in the bigger picture of things, it's anyone that is in a position where they could be exposed to abuse and not necessarily know how to get support or get help or what to do to get out of that situation. And so for us, every single employee, contractor, intern, volunteer who works for our facility has this duty to be a mandated reporter, which means that if you have any reasonable cause, any suspicion, or, you know, valid, you know, substantiated belief that there is abuse or neglect that's occurring and that someone is being victimized, we have a responsibility to report that. Now, that does also include exploitation. So if you guys are seeing situations where maybe there's like some financial control or abuse, any of these things, we want to make sure that, you know, if you're not sure, you can always call us. You can always ask, is this something I should be reporting? But in general, if you have a feeling of discomfort, it's usually a sign that we want to be looking a little bit more into this. And so with that being said, and before we go into the next section, I want to ask, in this field, are there any of you who believe that you've seen some sort of abuse or potentially neglect? And if you've ever seen something like that, what are some of the signs? What are some things that you look for that might clue you in that there's a concern?
There's a training here.
Probably looking for Rocky Mountain.
Yes,
I think
that's it.
someone might not be muted. If you wouldn't mind
Melvin,
muting
can
for
you, Melvin,
Stacy
please
to
mute
help.
your mic.
Kevin?
Yeah, so I would say some of the signs could be body language. The way they're reacting, if they're, you know, there's certain things that a person can do with their body that could be demonstrating something that they've been through, something or something that's happening. That's why it's important when we do have one-on-ones or something too, to pay attention to body language, because a lot of times we could be missing something, or something could be being told to us via body. So that is one of the ways we can tell that something may be off.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Eddie?
Yes, you can also look for nonverbal cues, not just body language, but you can see bruising, injuries, things of that nature.
Mhm.
You know,
Physical
those,
signs, yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of physical signs that they can speak louder than words sometimes.
Okay. Anyone else? Bill?
Also look for verbal clues. Things that the client says. Oh, we've had to call the police several times. The police have been out to our house several times. Gosh, I wonder if there's some other place that I can stay. At which point that should cue you to go, are you not feeling safe where you are? And if you kind of get the response, yeah, they're not feeling safe, then you start to dig. Then you start to ask additional questions.
Mhm. Good point. Good point. Well, let's take a look at some some indicators. So, Eddie mentioned physical injuries, some things that maybe they can't be explained. You're seeing marks or injuries or bruises with, you know, increasing regularity, or even if it's not increasing regularity, you're seeing things that might not necessarily be typical for someone at their age. Obviously for a child to be running and then skin their knee and then it heals, and then a couple weeks later they run and they trip and they fall and they skin their knee, you might not look at a skinned knee and think, oh, there's an injury. It's unexplainable. It doesn't make sense for this person or their age. Probably not, right? If you look at a kid and they're skinning their knees over and over, they might just be running around all the time, slipping and tripping and playing, right? But it's kind of looking for what are some things that don't really line up for this person. Kevin?
So I just want to piggyback. I think the physical part is very important.
Mhm.
But growing up as an abused child, my mom used to make sure she whooped us wherever, or abused us wherever long sleeve shirts will fit
Mhm.
or clothes would fit. And
Yes.
the whole time I was going to school, the counselors really never knew because my body would be covered.
Mhm.
And it took my body language and for that to come out, for
Mhm.
a counselor or somebody to step in.
Mhm.
And then I've seen it with my mom, growing up. You know, uh, her boyfriend, he would never put bruises on her where they would see him at work. So a lot of times for me, it's always important to always still ask and to look, because I know some people are so deceptive in their abuse that they know how to cover up their abuse. And
Mhm.
sometimes with bruises can easily be covered because you got these manipulators that know how to abuse and hide it.
Mhm.
And for me, it took pretty much all of elementary for it to come out. And because I can still go to school and play, what kid doesn't like to play, until a number of beatings kept happening. And then my body language and the way I was slumping and the way I started jumping and reacting to certain things that the teacher may come by and do is what
Mhm.
really set it off for them to start to investigate and ask questions. I do think body injuries are important, but sometimes they can be hidden. So I think there's got to be other ways we can look at and to see if
Mhm.
somebody is safe or not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and even then, Kevin, that goes exactly into some of the other things that we're looking at is behavioral changes or just
Hmm.
odd behaviors, fearfulness, jumpiness, always being hyper vigilant or hyper alert, where they're like feeling like something might go wrong, difficulty sleeping at night, being really exhausted during the school day because you were up all night dealing with, you know, midnight madness from your parent or whatever the case may be. What are some of these behaviors that are really odd? Like you said, what kid doesn't love to play? Well, if they're coming to school and they're too tired to play, it's just looking for these little things that just seem off. And the same thing is
Mhm.
true even for adults. You might see this in an appointment or a session with one of your clients. You might see this with a coworker who's coming to work and, has some of these types of behaviors. Obviously, we would hope not, but the reality is these are just the general signs that we want you guys to be keeping an eye out for. Some unexplained illnesses that, may not be treated or addressed, or someone's not getting support or help. Maybe their needs are being neglected. Unexplained absences from social events, appointments, school or other activities. And why that matters, think about it. If someone just recently got hurt, they might not want to show up for that social event, even though they were looking forward to it. They might not show up for an appointment, even though they love their appointments with you and they really benefit from them. There just might be these other, associated things that have them feeling fearful or ashamed, or, have them hiding right now, whether it's one thing or another, whether it's a physical sign or just hiding some sort of distress. But yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's not just one thing. Eddie?
So I'd just like to thank Kevin for sharing that. I have a little bit of experience with that myself, growing up, and it takes a lot of courage, Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Some other things that we want to look for, and you guys might see this, whether it's like neglect or just kind of struggling with taking care of some basic needs because there are other things that are distressing someone in their life that are taking priority, might be poor hygiene or just kind of not being as well put together as they might have historically been. Again, we're going to see some behavioral fluctuations, high anxiety, being extremely withdrawn when this person is not typically withdrawn. Maybe they're extremely demanding because this is a place where they feel like they can demonstrate and take control in their lives. And so they're a little bit over controlling, or they're mimicking some of these behaviors of someone who's abusing them, or maybe overly compliant, right? Where you just see like they kind of go along with everything, even if it might not feel like it's the best for them, but maybe some of a lack or hesitance when it comes to speaking up or sharing. They might be avoiding certain locations where someone, is putting this sort of fear into them, or they're not feeling safe and they don't really want to be in that environment. Or, for a child, some things that we want to tune into. And I think that it's really important, especially working with, a population that may still be struggling intermittently with getting, with their recovery journey, is making sure that the children in the home have adequate supervision, that they're not exposed to dangerous items, that the home is safe for them, and that they're able to get their needs met: food, clothing, they have heat, they have water, they're able to rest, and they're in a comfortable environment. And, all of these things are just kind of signs. It doesn't necessarily mean that one thing in and of itself is indicative of abuse, but it starts to give you these little glimpses where you can say, okay, well, if I see this and now I'm seeing this and now I'm seeing this, if you're not sure or you think there is some cause for concern, then at least it gives you that idea. It prompts the question. And then you can give Bill or Melvin or myself a call and say, what do you think about this? Do you think I'm overreacting? Do you think that it's report worthy? Do you think that I should do something? But either way, we want to at least open up that dialogue, because what we don't want is for you to be all alone on an island with this huge burden on your shoulders, feeling, like you don't know what to do. You're confused. You don't know if you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. We all want to, kind of take this consultative approach and share that responsibility. So, because I think that at the end of the day, none of us would want to feel like we're responsible for, or we didn't do something to prevent someone from getting hurt, but we don't want to feel responsible for someone getting hurt. And really, we don't want to see anyone getting hurt. But yeah, it doesn't have to be definitive. just know that sometimes it's not always going to be super obvious. Are there any other signs that you guys feel like you might have seen in your experience that maybe weren't on that list that we just shared, that you would encourage other coaches or people to tune into? Someone was saying something.
Well, I was gonna say is, you know, a lot of individuals they'll be in denial. Like I knew this one person that was perfectly fine in her world living in a van, you know? And you know, it's just sometimes they see things from their perspective. We just gotta just find the right thing to say, or just a dialogue that resonates where they could kind of, you know, create a sense of self-reflection and just understand certain things that they just accustomed to not doing. I
Mhm.
believe.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good point. I mean, speaking of, like, I do know someone who chose to live a life off the grid, didn't
Yeah.
want an apartment, didn't want to feel
Mhm.
like they were tied to the expectations of society and having a full-time job and putting all your money toward rent. And they just worked part-time here and there, gig work, and lived in their car. And,
Yes.
while I might not do that, it's their worldview.
Mhm.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're, in a dangerous situation. But now, what if they have a child? And we know that the child is living in that vehicle and the child doesn't have money for food and the child doesn't have, their needs taken care of. Then it's a
Mhm.
little bit of a different dynamic, right? And
Yes.
so absolutely it's
Yes.
kind of us finding, well, just because we have a
Mhm.
different thought process doesn't mean necessarily that it's bad. But then at the same time, they might not even see something that is abusive as being bad or as being potentially dangerous or concerning. Yeah. Does anyone else have any examples that you can think of that you might have seen in your experience?
I had some examples
Who is
just in
that?
my own life. My daughter, she had a diaper rash that kept coming back, and then found out while I was at work that my ex wasn't really taking care of her
Oh.
during the daytime. So
Mm-hmm.
that was frustrating, but it was small, subtle signs like diaper rash. She started having like bed sores on her back because she was just laying in the bassinet all day doing
Oh,
nothing.
that's so sad,
So,
James.
but
And yes, great example. And thank you for sharing that. That would just
like
be.
the least subtle, or the smallest subtle sign was her hair kept coming and going on her head, and I realized that the shape of the bald spot on her head was the shape of her chew, like strawberry chew toy or chew teething ring, because it was just sitting on her head or on her back.
Mm-hmm.
So the signs can be subtle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Eddie?
Well, I was just taking a look here at the slide that's up right now, and just just sparked me to think about and just relate to the group that no matter how well trained we are and how many times we go through this training every year, there are some times that we are not going to catch the signs. You're just not going to see them. And I'll give you a good example as I very recently, over the past year, lost a very good friend of mine who I used to work with. And he took his own life. And, I used to speak to him, frequently. He's always cracking jokes. He was a big clown in the office. And then just one day I got a call in the morning from another partner of mine, said, hey, he's no longer with us. And just moving forward throughout the months, everybody's getting together, trying to figure out what might have gone wrong, what signs did we miss. And it just took a lot of investigating to see that he was being abused by his wife at home, and it took a toll on him. And he was just really good at hiding it. Like Kevin says, if you want to hide it, you're gonna hide it, and you're gonna hide it well. So I just want to let everybody know, just be prepared for that. But when that does happen, you can't do like myself and a lot of our buddies did. It's just kind of like blame ourselves for, not seeing those signs. Because again, you just can't, you're not going to be successful every single time.
Kevin?
Yeah, so I I just wanted to piggyback off what Eddie, right? Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback off that because that is so true. A lot of times I was watching this it was a documentary on mental health, and it was a statement that they talked about, and when he was describing his buddy, they were saying those are the ones that we need to check up on the most, because the ones that's always asking how everybody else is doing, always seem so happy on the outside and cracking jokes, and that gives the persona to others that, oh, they're good, they're happy, they're asking how we're doing. And so in return, naturally, we don't ask that person, no, how are you doing? What is going on in your life? And sometimes they say that within itself is a sign of somebody that's going through something, someone that's always happy, seems to have it all, always making sure everybody else is happy and asking how everybody else is doing. They say a lot of times those are the ones, that's why you get those like suicides like that where people you just don't know, but the sign was those are the ones that's always the caregiver, making sure everybody is happy. No one is really asking them, hey, how are you doing? And not just a basic how are you doing, really digging into how are they doing and trying to find it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that support and asking the question, how are you doing? And then really listening and waiting for the answer, how powerful. And that is what we have the opportunity to do. And we have the opportunity to really be there for people and allow them to open up and go a little bit deeper. But absolutely, yeah, some people are masters at trying to hide it. And it's kind of like you said, Kevin, if you're raised hiding it, being taught and trained and coached and, told if you tell someone, it'll be worse. And, it's basically this thing where there is a lot of grooming that goes into keeping these things a secret. And
Yeah.
so, really being there to support people and open that door for them, it's potentially life-changing. So if you receive a direct report, what are your responsibilities? Really, they boil down to basically three things. And it's to be calm, reassuring, and supportive. And, with that being your initial response, keep in mind when someone comes to you and they're about to make a report, this is probably very challenging, maybe scary, maybe overwhelming for them to talk about. And so we want to make sure that, if they come to us, that we acknowledge that this, is likely very challenging or scary, and just reassure them that we're here for you. We don't want to be the person that responds with, oh my gosh, how could they? That's so disgusting. How despicable. And responding with judgment, because whether you believe that you're saying the right thing or not, the reality is in many cases, someone who's making a report may have mixed emotions about the person that has been abusing them or neglecting them. In a lot of cases, it's someone close to them who they love and feel care for in many cases, right? And so being judgmental or critical or, showing disdain toward that person as an emotional response may not necessarily be reassuring to them. But what we do want to do is just kind of be the listening ear, have a conversation where they're not really being made to feel like they are to blame, and have a conversation that, as much as possible is judgment free. Let them know that you're going to be there for them, offer support or ask them what they might desire when it comes to support from you, because they might tell you that they want you to report something. They might tell you that they have an additional need. Can you help me try to find somewhere to live? They might actually have some ideas about what they would like support to look like. And if they don't, that's okay. We don't have to guide it. But what we really want to make sure is that it doesn't feel like an interrogation. And in fact, we want to make sure that we're avoiding asking too many questions so that way we don't interfere with certain investigations that may occur in the future. Right now, I'm saying this specifically. I know that we primarily work with adults, but I think you guys have probably seen like those movies, or I don't know if it's like an after school special or mini TV movie that used to come out in the 90s. And, it was like, well, coaxing a child to get the child to say what you believe they were going to say. And so we don't want to interrogate or put any ideas in someone's head. We just really want to be receptive of the information that they're willing to share and then offer that reassuring, non-judgmental support. Does anyone have any comments about these three things? Like, I don't know, easier said than done, or have you ever been in this role where you've had to be this person and provide these things?
Yeah, so like from my experience, I volunteer every Thursday at the Dream Center. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that place, but I go there every Thursday, and as you know, the community come in and we serve them, and we just provide some level of mentorship. And definitely, the energy that you provide can be a reflection of the response that you get from, the clients. So definitely being calm and because, the level of executive functions is a little far out of reach, and sometimes they're not understanding, and being supportive is key. And definitely the tone and how your vibe, everything matters, man. Believe it or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it
Absolutely.
does. It does.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of mirror neurons, but have any of you ever heard of mirror neurons and like how people naturally kind of mimic each other?
I have a familiarity with it, but the way you phrase it, it could be a different term in the field. So I'm not sure.
But yeah, I mean, in general, there are so many trainings. Maybe you guys have been to some where it talks about co-regulating emotions when you're helping someone. If they're at a 10 and you're at a 2 and you demonstrate this calm, there is kind of this natural tendency for people to mimic each other or mirror each other's energy. And, you probably see reels about it all the time, matching energy and, people vibing with each other. But even babies do it, right? You smile at the baby smiles. You laugh at the baby. And even though the baby doesn't know what's funny, the baby laughs at you, right? But there's just kind of this natural tendency for people to mimic each other. And so you're absolutely right. The energy that we bring in, hopefully it is that calming, reassuring, supportive energy that's going to help this person to see, even though I might be at a 10 right now because this is really stressful, someone calm and supportive is right here, and it might help them kind of gradually drift down a little bit and match your level.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
At the end of the day, if you receive a direct report, if you don't know what to do, there's no obligation for you to actually get in there and intervene and do something to disrupt the situation or stop it or prevent it yourself. Your only and primary responsibility is to just make sure that you report it. And so if you ever have any questions about that, again, you can always give us a call, but some basics about who gets notified. For children, it's going to generally be Child Protective Services, the Department of Human Services. For us in Colorado, we have a child abuse hotline, which I believe the phone number is 844-CO4-KIDS. And I'm just like Googling that randomly anytime I'm, suspecting something funky. But it is on the internet, but I believe it's also 844-CO4-KIDS. For adults, you may notify Adult Protective Services. And if you really believe that there's an imminent risk of harm for another person, you can always call 911 or law enforcement. And then after that notification occurs, you're going to want to notify your operations manager, who will then initiate the on-call process by notifying either myself, Melvin, or Terry, with Melvin obviously being primary because he has decades of experience as a child and family investigator, as someone who responds to crises and is our clinical expert. But if he's not available, then Terry and myself will also try to just help make sure that if there's any additional guidance that we can help provide that. Now, in many cases, I know that you might be worried about making a report, and then I think it was Cheyenne earlier that said, I'm afraid of damaging the trust in my relationship with my client. Well, in some cases, if you feel that it's best, you can also make a report and have it remain confidential. I know when I've called into the abuse hotline in the past, there have been a couple of times where I called in and, I wanted it to remain confidential. And then there were a couple of other times where I said, no, this is who I am. Call me if you need anything. You can come and find me, because I didn't really feel like it was going to have a negative impact on any future relationships or interactions by me making this report about someone that I wasn't as closely connected to. And then lastly, we do need to make sure that you write an incident report if you witness any event or you have any sort of concerns that are related to abuse or neglect, because after that report is made, or this sort of situation is experienced by you, Melvin and I have the responsibility on the very next business day after the event occurs to take that incident report that you write and then to notify the state that this event has happened. That's actually called a critical incident. And that's going to be the next training that we go over together. So with that being said, I wanted to see, does anybody have any questions about the mandated reporter training before we move into the review of critical incidents? Bill? Are you muted, Bill?
It's the age thing. I wanted to point out that there are going to be those situations. We hope that there isn't, but there may be those situations where you have knowledge of abuse or child abuse or et cetera, et cetera. I wanted to caution you not to become physically involved. Do not go to the patient's house and confront their spouse. Do not confront the abuser. Just report, and let us in management make the right notifications, because if there is some sort of intervention that needs to happen, it needs to be the proper authorities. So just don't try and do it yourself, because I know a lot of times my anger will take over and I'll want to be involved and want to protect whoever it is that I need to protect, when you can't do that. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out. Thank you, Casey.